how much does it cost to buy or sell a property? What are all the fees associated and how do you actually calculate them? That's what we're gonna find out in this video. This video is cut into two pieces. The first half is gonna be all the buying. I am not giving you the finger. Sorry, let me do that again. The first half is going to be the buyer's side of things when you're buying a property, what you pay, and the second half is going to be everything that the seller has to pay, timestamps at the bottom of this video. So you found a place, you're looking to buy it for the first time, and you're like, you know what, let's make an offer, but first, how much is it going to cost, like everything outside of how much money we're paying for the house? Let's talk about it. Number one is PTT, property transfer tax. The buyer pays this on every time they buy a property. I'll put the numbers on screen so you can see them for yourself, but it's 1% on the first 200,000, 2% on 200,000 to 2 million, and 3% on all further amounts exceeding 2 million. And another 2% on every amount that is exceeding 3 million. But we'll do a quick example. A $1.5 million home, 1% on that first 200,000 equals $2,000. 2% from 200,000 to 1.3 million equals 26,000. So overall, you're paying $28,000 for a $1.5 million home. This is essentially the government taking a little bit. That's kind of what it is. But essentially what property transfer tax is just getting taxed for moving the title of a property from someone else to you. And there is a tax on that. Number two for the buyers is GST. Here in British Columbia, GST is 5% of the sale price, only applicable on brand new homes or homes that have never been lived in. So for example, if you're thinking about buying a pre-sale, every time you see a price, maybe it's 800,000, add 5% to that amount because that is what you will have to pay that on top. Number three is legal and notary fees, like your lawyer. This is the person that makes it official and actually puts your name on the title of the property and does the actual paperwork to transfer title and ownership, often around $1,000 for their time. And you usually pay this once the deal is agreed upon, the price and all that kind of thing, because this is when they're actually gonna, like I said, make it official, start doing the paperwork, and so you will pay this out of pocket. Number four is an appraisal. Now these are sometimes covered by your bank, or sometimes they actually don't send anyone at all. Essentially what the process is that you're gonna buy a house and it's $500,000. The bank is gonna lend you $300,000 for a mortgage, but before they give you that $300,000, they're gonna be like, we're gonna send an appraiser to make sure that we actually think that property is worth $500,000. Otherwise, we don't want to lend you that money. Like I said, sometimes your lender will actually just cover it and send someone. Other times you might have to pay for an appraisal, which can come to around $500. Number five are the inspections. Now, sometimes you get multiple inspections done on a property you want to buy. Sometimes you don't get any. And if you don't know how subjects work within a real estate offer, ask your realtor about it or book a meeting with us, send an email to us below and we'll definitely help out because it's a very important part of making an offer and contracts. Essentially, having an inspection done can be a subject in the contract because if you don't like what the inspector finds, you can say, all right, I'm not gonna buy it anymore, I'm backing out. So that technically makes an offer a little less competitive when you have an inspection clause in there. The bigger the house or the apartment, they can, cost more because it takes more of the inspector's time. We just did one the other day on an apartment building, a large one in downtown Vancouver, and it was around $700 for the 700 square foot unit and that building. On average, I'd say that's about right, $700. Number six as a buyer is your realtor, which actually doesn't really count. It doesn't become part of this list because when a seller sells a house, they actually pay for both the agents. So as a buyer, your realtor you're not actually paying your realtor for anything. They're just coming along for the journey and answering questions. And then they get paid obviously in the end for their time just by the seller of the house. How much? Well, we'll get to that in a second. So conclusion for a buyer, those are the 5 things you want to keep in mind. You can add them up. Most of them you can add up ahead of time if you have your general budget in mind. Depends on if you get an inspection done, if you need an appraisal. And also do keep in mind there are other fees associated with owning. These are just the ones that are right at the start. So when you now own the property, then there's going to be strata fees, utilities, sometimes mortgage insurance. And again, we have other videos on the channel if you want to check those out, but those are the main 5 that we just covered when you're a buyer. And now on to selling. So you've decided to sell your home. Hopefully it's with us so we can sell it right away. Let's talk about realtors first. There's no exact rate that every realtor uses. Some can ask for more, some less even, but if they're asking for less money, their services might not be as good. So you just keep that in mind. We could say an average of 7% on the first $100,000 usually goes towards realtors and 3% on the remainder of the property's value. The listing realtor and the buyer's realtor then split that. And let's do an example. $1.5 million home, 7% on the first $100,000 is $7,000 plus 3% on the remainder comes to $42,000. So that $7,000 plus $42,000 is $49,000. So that $49,000 would go to the two realtors who would then split it. And that's if you're selling a $1.5 million property. Number two for a seller is the legal/lawyer and notary fees. Once again, just like before, you have one on the buyer side and the seller side, and you could expect that to be, again, around $1,000 to make sure everything is transferred correctly. Number three is cleaners, which this one technically is optional, but a lot of good realtors, and like us included, we include in the contract that whenever our buyer takes possession of the property, it has to be professionally cleaned, or else. I don't put or else. Well, actually I do put or else in the contract because it says or else you'll give us money so we can actually get it professionally clean. No one wants to buy a new house and then it's dirty. So if you're selling, you don't really technically have to clean it unless it says in the contract, but most people do put it in there. So most of the time you are gonna have to get your place professionally cleaned once your stuff is out before the new people move in. And we'll say that's around $350 for 1,000 square foot apartment. Around $350. So the more square footage, the more expensive it's gonna be. Number four is staging. And what staging is furniture staging. You know, you want your apartment to look nice. So you pay a company to come in and stage the property. And as a seller, you kind of rent the furniture to like live in your house for a little while. You don't need this all the time. This is an optional one, but maybe you don't have super nice furniture or you're in between moving your furniture already, so you want it to look nice. Here's some footage of a house that we just recently sold. It was both sides of a duplex. We staged pretty much the whole thing, and I think it costs around $3,000 for our sellers, but we ended up selling both sides of the duplex over asking price, and it was in like a matter of days, and they just present so well. Like with no furniture in here, it's just not the same, and some people just can't imagine a space or how you would use it until you actually make it feel like home with some staging. So it depends on how much furniture you need and how long you need to have it in the place for, how long you need to rent it for. We had ours in there for about a week or two, and yeah, I believe it was around $3,000, but this was a full house. And number five, as a seller, this one hurts a little bit because it's another tax. The capital gains tax. In Canada here, we have the capital gains tax. So essentially what it is when you sell your property, whatever amount of money you made from when you bought it to when you sold it, 50% of that amount is going to be taxed. So you bought a house for $1 million, now it's worth $1.5 million. So you made $500,000. Well, 50% of that, $250,000, can then be taxed. And the amount that it gets taxed depends on how much money you make in a year, because they count it as income tax. And again, here in Canada, we have income tax brackets. So depending on how much money you make per year, you're gonna get taxed a different amount. The more money you make, you get taxed a little bit more for each increment going up. So to find the exact numbers, which you could do before selling your property, you could talk to your financial advisor and say, hey, if we sold this house for $1.5 million, how much money would I have to pay? Because this is how much money I make in a year. I know that was a mouthful, but go show this video, that what I just said, to your financial advisor, and then they'll get it. Okay, so you don't have to memorize it. Throwing just a ballpark number out there, again, confirm this with your financial advisor, but let's say $250,000, that's gonna be taxed. You could expect like 30 or 40%, or maybe a little more, depending again on how much money you make per year in your job, but 30 or 40% to be taken from that $250,000. And those are the main costs in selling your property in British Columbia. These are the largest and most common ones, so now you have something to base your numbers off. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section of this video, or if you want to send an email, my email is in the description of this video, and you can ask me anything. I'm here to be a free resource. So hope to hear from you, and we'll see you in the next video.